Hi, friends. It's so good to be with you today. And what I'm talking to you about this week is a series of teachings for the next 5 days that will only be about 10 minutes. I want to talk today about Palm Sunday, the so called Triumphal Entry. This is when Jesus came from Bethany, which is just about 3 miles over the backside of the hill outside of Jerusalem, where Mary and Martha and Lazarus lived. And he sat on a donkey and he entered the city of Jerusalem, knowing that this was the week of his destined crucifixion and ultimate resurrection. Here's the point I want to make about Triumphal Sunday. The people gathered in massive crowds on both sides of the road as he walked down through the Kidron Valley to enter Jerusalem, and they worshiped him, and they sang, and they shouted, Hosanna. They were made up of the blind who were healed, and the deaf, and the lame, and the deceased who were raised to life, and the 5,000 that he fed from one boy's lunch. The miraculous outpouring of Jesus' ministry paid off in the fruitfulness of the crowd that worshiped him. The biggest mistake I hear is that speakers say, and I'm not sure I didn't say it, in years past. It goes something like this. This is how fickle people are. On Palm Sunday, they worshiped him and waved palm branches, and 5 days later, they shouted, crucify him. Not true. Not true. The crowd who worshiped him loved him all the way to the cross. They dispersed in terror, they wept, and they committed to spread the word of his beautiful life. They are not the ones who crucified him. Who crucified him then? It was a conspiracy started by what I call the priesthood mafia, the Levitical priesthood from the high priest right down, who served in the temple on the Temple Mount, were corrupt. They were treacherous, they were thieves, they were hypocrites, and they hated Jesus because they saw him as a threat to their personal kingdom, which, by the way, yielded them millions of dollars a year by cheating people on the purchase of their sacrifices. We'll talk more about that on the next session. So those who worshiped him all the way to the cross. Those who crucified him conspired to crucify him from the day he entered Jerusalem. In fact, way before that. So here's what we take from that. You are either on the side of loving and worshiping him, or you are on the side of rejecting him. That's the only two sides. I don't really see a neutral. There's no neutral side. Jesus said, you are either for me or you are against me. So I want you to think about this. Are you in the crowd that if you were there, you would have found a palm branch? By the way, I understand in those days, there weren't any palms native to Jerusalem. If you don't know this, it's an interesting fact. Jerusalem is not really desert, it's high. Jerusalem's about the altitude of Denver, Colorado. It's about 5,000 feet, and it snows there in the winter. And it wasn't a place for palms. Palms grew in the desert. The point is, some of those worshipers might have had to travel 20 miles to harvest palm fronds in order to bring them to worship him. Why a palm? Because that's what they did for kings. They used palm branches like fans, and they would fan them over a king. And as he entered, it was a sign of obeisance and of worship and of celebration. So the crowd gathered with palms, and they worshiped him, and they loved him, and they shouted his name, and they thanked him, because in that crowd were people like Bartimaeus, who was blind and could now see. What about the woman whose daughter died and Jesus raised her again to life? She was in that crowd. What about the 10 lepers who were all healed? They must have been in that crowd. Mary Magdalene, freed from 7 demonic spirits. She was in that crowd. The disciples were in that crowd, those who loved him. They shouted, Hosanna. By the way, Hosanna is a Hebrew word that in the Old Testament means Lord help us. But on that day of his entry, it was turned into a worship word. Hosanna to God in the highest. It was changed to the meaning, God has helped us. God has helped us. And for you and I personally, I want you to think about that. You're not without help. God has helped us. God has helped us. If you have a personal need, reach out to him, cry out to him, because he's the God who helps us. This week, I heard the testimony of the world's #1 golfer currently, a young man named Scotty Scheffler. And he was giving his testimony, and it really moved me. He said, as a boy, I didn't really know a lot about God. My parents took me to church. I didn't understand. And he said, and I thought it was a great analogy. He said, here's the way I would make the analogy for my relationship with God and how it changed. If you were to picture a father holding his young son by the hand to lead him into the ocean for his first experience with swimming in the ocean, and the young boy is scared, and he's holding on to his dad with all his might, hoping that he doesn't drown. But lo and behold, he discovers something. And this is what Scotty said. All of my life, I felt like I was holding on to God for dear life, and he may leave me anytime if I didn't hold on tight. And what I realized, it was really God holding on to me so that I wouldn't be lost. It's God holding on to us. And the triumphal entry of Jesus entering Jerusalem is the story of God coming to help us. So there was only two choices. There were only two choices. You could worship him as he entered, or you could help to participate in those who helped to crucify him, spit on him, cursed him, rejected him. There were those. And they were led by the mafia priesthood on the Temple Mount who hated Jesus. And I'll tell you more in the next session about why. Why did Jesus turn over the money changers' tables of commerce in the temple? And what did it mean? I'll talk to you about that next session when we go to Monday of the week that's most holy. God bless you. See you then.